Namaskar. Welcome to another 9 o'clock live. Acha, now, interestingly, you see, the money we earn, no, the money we earn, that money is being taken away by infiltrators, okay? And or people who create more children. I presume we're talking about Muslims here. So that's what the Prime Minister says. The Prime Minister says, Congress will come and distribute all the monies to these people. Acha, is that so? So I wanted to check with somebody. So who else to talk other than Sanjay Jha, who has been Sorry, I pressed the wrong button, guys. My understanding about technology. Anyway, I was just telling Sanjay, who else to talk other than you, because you've been one voice. Acha, Sanjay is still not with Congress. He's still not in the party, but he's been one voice who have been talking and we hear him. So nobody else, of course, seems to be talking. So, Sanjay, I want to ask you, as the only voice that one hears, is Congress biased? Are you guys appeasing the Muslims?
Not at all, Sujit. Let me say this categorically that what the Prime Minister said in Rajasthan was deplorable, despicable. And for him, which he gave you a hint actually, when a couple of days earlier he called the Congress manifesto as a Muslim League document. He said that every page is divisive and, one that will split the country. Really? If giving minimum wages of rupees 400 is a Muslim League conspiracy, is providing jobs to the young, giving them 1 lakh under Right to Apprenticeship Act only for Muslims, was providing women in families rupees 1 lakh per year, uh, one which was only being done to please one section of India, was providing Manrega at rupees 400, some kind of a religious witch hunt. I mean, what exactly was Mr. Modi trying to say? And I think yesterday, what you heard, Sujit, when Mr. Modi in Rajasthan made what I call is a clear, explicit, unambiguous hate speech. I think he exposed in his obsessive urge to always attack the Congress his own true avatar, which is that he sees himself still as the good old RSS Pracharak and as the emperor of Hindutva, the Hindu Hriday Samrat. To come back to your question, the Congress party can be accused of perhaps not playing its politics right, being inconsistent. Every political party tries to attract certain constituency of votes. But if, frankly, if the Muslims were truly appeased, you would not find Muslims who are today without jobs, majority, by the way. If you look at the entire minority population, look at the figures in backwardness, look at the data in the Sachar Committee report on schools, on good jobs in government, jobs in judiciary. The Muslims are truly disadvantaged, disempowered, and I would say, in a great number of ways, they are marginalized. So I think Muslim appeasement is a bogey of the BJP. It's a ballooning to try and basically make the majority community in India feel that a certain political party takes your taxable income and allocates it towards Muslims for votes. But I will tell you why even that is a mathematical absurdity. There are 100 voters in a room. 80 are Hindus, because that's the demographic distribution in India. 80 are Hindus, 14 are Muslims, and 6 are other minority community members, Christians, Sikhs, Jews, etc. And if you and I were two contestants, hypothetically speaking, would you, if you were the Congress and I was the BJP, if you were the Congress, would you be trying to woo only 14 votes and expect to get 51? I mean, what a ridiculous, preposterous argument is that? I mean, that's the reason why the Congress has won 10 of the 17 general elections and has governed India for 55 of the 77 years, because it got votes from all sections of society. So Mr. Modi is basically polarizing India. I think he's the most polarizing prime minister since independence. And that's, all of us are extremely unfortunate to experience it firsthand. And if the election commission was a functioning independent body, today we would have been discussing, Sujit, on your program, the fact as to what led to the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, being disqualified from contesting the Lok Sabha election under the Representation of People Act and the Model Code of Conduct, as well as him being banned from any further political campaigning during this election. But as we all know, the Election Commission is probably the Emperor's counsel. But the bottom line remains the same. There has not been minority appeasement. The Congress, however, has failed in articulating this by actually challenging the BJP with hard data. That's all.
Uh, Sanjay, let's go back a little and let's also look at it from a right wing perspective. Okay,
Sure.
there was the Shabano case, which definitely was seen as appeasement of Muslims. Sonia Gandhi had gone and met the Shahi Imam at one point in time for support in 2013, 14, that is 2013-14. So there has been instances where Congress has been seen as appeasing the Muslims. So how does one justify that?
Let me explain that to you. In my opinion, Sujit, we are a secular country yet, is defined in the preamble to the Constitution. And truth be said, in any civilized society, looking after the minorities is actually the duty of any government. A lot of these NRIs, especially the NRI diaspora in the United States and maybe even in UK, who are so vocal supporters of Mr. Modi, they are minorities in the United States. There, they would love to get fair and equal treatment, but they don't want the minorities in India to be given the same degree of respect. I believe that the Congress party had a duty and has an ongoing duty. In fact, all political parties have, is to make sure that those who are in our mainstream are not made to feel second rate because their numbers are lower. And that could include Christians, Sikhs, Jews, Buddhists, and Jains, etc. So the larger point is that I think if you look at the Shabanu case, let me address that for you. The Gandhi government had a lot of pressure from the clerics and the more traditional, shall we say, the imams, to try and say that, listen, this is the way we live under our own Muslim personal laws. And if the Supreme Court may have passed a judgment, which a lot of people believe is more fair in terms of human rights, or probably more egalitarian and humanitarian, etc., or more advanced and modern, but we have our laws and we would like to adhere to them. I think Mr. Rajiv Gandhi's government took that advice and assumed that they were speaking for the larger section of the Muslim community. If you look at one aspect, I agree that personally, if you ask me, I'm a liberal, I'm progressive, and I believe Shabanu verdict of the Supreme Court ought to have been maintained. Because after all, she was a divorced woman, and to expect a minimum level of alimony was no big deal. Here's the problem in politics, right? In politics, you have to also look at the community which is directly affected and look at who are the people who are leading them. Mr. Rajiv Gandhi's government believed that the people who went to them, obviously the more traditional leaders of the Muslim community, probably had a better handle or the pulse of the Muslim population in India. Now, the liberals, I don't want to even get into the BJP, because for BJP that became like a brilliant platform to exploit on minority appeasement and pseudo secularism and so on. But Mr. Rajiv Gandhi's government looked at it from the point of view of perhaps protecting the larger interests of what the Muslim leaders told him. Now, here is the catch: the government had to take a call that should you challenge the Supreme Court judgment by bringing a constitutional amendment and changing the law back to what it was? Or should we just uphold it because that's the Supreme Court and that's the highest judiciary of the land? So it does become also a political call. I think we have to concede that point. But was the Rajiv Gandhi government, can any Congress government be blamed for triggering what we saw in the demolition of the Babri Masjid thereafter? Who did that? Who was responsible for the riots that happened in Gujarat in 2002? Muzaffarnagar 2013 that led to a harvest of votes for the BJP in the Lok Sabha in 2014. The Delhi riots of 2020. Frankly, the ethnic violence in Manipur ongoing as we talk in 2022, 2023. The violence in Haryana. So, end of day, I think the Congress party can be blamed for being politically opportunistic in the Shah Bano case, or perhaps jumping the gun in banning Salman Rushdie's book. But we are still somewhere down the line going round and round talking about things that happened for which there were political and electoral consequences for the Congress. What you got to look at now is that Prime Minister Modi is calling the Muslims of this country infiltrators, what Amit Shah called as termites. In fact, Amit Shah has gone a step forward, if I've read correctly. He has repeated Mr. Modi's statement and said that money will be taken from temples and monasteries and given away to. I mean, this is so brazen, it's blatant, it's very orchestrated between these two, the Modi Shah combined. It's a BJP playbook. I mean, remember, Sujit, that here is a prime minister who says the Mangal Sutra, right, which is worn by Hindu women. The Mangal Sutra will be taken away. Do you realize how personalized, how absolutely crude, and in my opinion, is vicious? And here is a man who took an oath on the Indian constitution. We should look at the oath that prime ministers take when they become the head of the country. Is Mr. Modi adhering to that oath? The answer is a clear-cut no. I think we should worry about that.
Fair enough, Sanjay. Let's talk about Congress being fair to Muslims. Assuming if that is true, then why were the Muslims as a community so underdeveloped for 70 years? You see, fair enough. I mean, had they been, appeasement is one end, but the fact remains that Congress ended up doing a Shah Banu. Congress ended up maybe meeting the Shahi Imam, but Congress never ever developed Muslim community. Why? Why was that?
I will concede that point that the Congress party should have done more. The very fact that Dr. Manmohan Singh, and full credit to the most underrated prime minister of our times, I totally believe when Dr. Manmohan Singh said that history will look at me kindly. I think history will be more than generous with him, especially after the subsequent 10 years after 2014 that we are all experiencing. Here is the truth, Sujit, that the Congress party should have done more. Absolutely. No denying that. That Dr. Manmohan Singh had to appoint a Sachar committee that gave you data that if you look at the data, I wrote about that in my book. I'm not going to repeat statistics here, but it showed that Muslims were economically humongously backward. Then there was a
35%.
absolutely
35% were below poverty line. Yes.
absolutely. I mean, in fact, the numbers here are, I've got it here in front of me, and I'll maybe read off a few for you. It had abysmal literacy figures, much lower than the national average, with 25% Muslim children between the ages of 6 and 14 were not even at school. Let me give you another one. The Muslim other backward classes are worse off by far compared to the Hindu OBCs. The share of Muslims in all recruitments by State Public Service Commission is about 2.1%, and their population is 14%. Now, I can understand that you can say, and there is a lot of stats. Now, you can say that you can't have a direct, replica of the Muslim population being getting a same degree of representation everywhere, but it's nowhere close. So here is my point: the Congress party should have done better. But the other problem in politics, this is my experience, and I think the BJP is also a past master at that. That very often political parties, they tend to believe that if a particular community or a particular state or a particular troubled area doesn't develop enough, it actually needs the state a lot more. And it perpetuates a certain dependence on a political party, the state government. So I think it's a combination of that belief that change can't be brought about in a spectacular manner, that it must be incremental. But the one place where I don't fault the Congress at all is I know that at core you can blame the Congress for not doing enough for the Muslims. You can, or could have done significantly better. You can blame the Congress for even sometimes playing, very apparent vote bank politics. But what you cannot fault the Congress for is kind of creating any degree of animus or hatred towards the community, like you're seeing the Prime Minister doing, by the way. And I think the Congress is right in taking him to the Election Commission for a hate speech. And the Congress cannot be blamed for sitting back and allowing violence to continue when conflicts did happen, which I think are critical differentiators in political parties. The BJP, if you look at the real, what I would call is the chronology that Mr. Shah uses very often: Babri Masjid 92 93, Gujarat riots 2002, Muzaffarnagar 2013, Delhi riots 2002, Manipur in 2023. The five most, shall we say, explosive and dangerous conflicts within our country. And I believe the 92, 93 literally kind of defenestrated communities within the country is BJP's doing. And I think the Congress, in that sense, has been more secular than any party.
Fair enough. While nobody denies the fact that Congress wasn't secular, but the fact remains that Congress did use Muslims, Sanjay. One can't deny that, can we? And the fact is, they used purely as a vote bank. And maybe, like you rightly said, they also tried to ensure that Muslims remained the way they were because they could use them better as vote banks. Wasn't that a fact before we move to the BJP part of the story?
Well, let me tell you that, the Muslims chose to be in independent India. Where did their confidence really come from, right? They really believed in the Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru assurances on Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar's constitution, on Sardar Patel's very universal approach to a multicultural society. You see, the truth remains that end of day, you'll remember that famous incident where Pandit Nehru said that if you touch the hair of any one Muslim, you will have to first come and deal with me. That was not just some kind of a cinematic shot in the movie Gandhi, right? That was a true happenstance. So here is the reality, Sujit, that I think the Congress party's intent was never doubted. If you think about it, the Muslims continue to support the Congress party. In fact, consistently, despite the inequities or the inequalities in the system. It's not that riots didn't happen before. I meet a lot of BJP spokespersons in programs who say, who rattle off the riots that happened before. Well, obviously the Congress was in government. Of course, the Congress was in both center and state, but they never tell you who triggered those riots. And I keep telling them, why don't you read MJ Akbar, who's your own BJP leader, and read his book Riots After Riots and get to know who triggered it. They'll never answer who triggered it. No government in the world can anticipate what's going to happen tomorrow, right? They can only hope to prevent it once it happens.
Correct.
So here is the bottom line. Here is my one line here.
Please.
That end of day, I think the Muslims have continued to support it until, of course, the Babri Masjid demolition, which made many people believe that the Congress government was ambivalent or clearly not, as bold faced in preventing that destruction. And the impression that was floated that the former Prime Minister, Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao, was like a Tweedledum and Tweedledee situation at that point of time. I don't want to get into that debate. But here is the truth. The truth is that around that 92, 93, you had already seen the rise of Mandal politics. And I think when the Mandal politics came up, I think you saw the rise of a different constituency of politicians. And they began to attract a new social coalition. And the BJP benefited because they could then go and attempt a more vigorous polarization on the Hindu religious identity to oppose the Mandal's backward class reservation story. The Congress, which is a challenge, Sujit, I want to tell you, a challenge for all centrist parties, is you got to know how to do the balancing act, right? It's like walking with 2 feet on two separate banana peels. And that's where the Congress leadership faltered.
Why is always Congress into this problem? Let me ask you a question related to this, Sanjay. Sanjay, is there a duality in Congress, within Congress, congressmen? You see, you had a Jyotiraditya Scindia, who used to be a tall leader in Congress, who I remember, standing in that huge stage that was supposed to be a resurrection seminar for Congress, where he said, for me, Ram and Rahim is one, and then cut to, I saw him in another stage. Of course, the color was different, and he was talking about how he shuns this party who never believed in Ram. So, I mean, that's just one example. I don't want to talk about the gentleman, the Professor Gaurav Vallabh and all that. I don't want to talk about him. So many people. Every person who jumps out of Congress, the next day morning, he's saffron. And he talks about how important it is to be a Hindu. Now the question is, if ideologies are so fragile with Congress and congressmen, what are you expecting from Congress? And is this the same Congress what you're talking about? I mean, you talk about Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Of course, things were different then. You talk about Mahatma Gandhi. Of course, things were different then. Is this the same now?
Sujit, a very pertinent question. One of the reasons why Congress has actually diminished compared to what it used to be is it because it engaged in the same transactional politics that the BJP does. In fact, the BJP, a lot of people thought was ideologically pure. But do you know that one third of the Lok Sabha candidates are all defectors, right? So the BJP is equally contaminated today. But let's go back to the Congress question. As far as the Congress is concerned, tell me, why was Amit Shah so successful in Operation Lotus, buying MLAs at will, whether it was ED, income tax, or CBI, or whether it was, as alleged by many, dollops of dollar signs? The truth remains that he was able to get people to move. I'm telling you on your program, I have not moved. I'm the perfect example before you of someone whom the government can choose to come after if they wish. But I'm not attracted by an allurement, neither am I threatened by any midnight knocks on my door. And that's what political ideology is. And here is my
But
answer to your question.
but no. But then I will ask you a personal question, since
Yeah.
we're talking about that. You haven't moved and have been always saying that. But has Congress knocked your door? Has Congress come to you? Have they asked you to join them? No, it's very important, because do they believe in ideology? Do they respect ideology?
Well,
That's what I want to know.
I don't want to take names, but I want to confess on your program that I'm close to a few very senior Congress leaders. And I must admit, in all frankness, that while the world tries to cut a little meme on me being suspended, the truth is that they have been extremely warm and friendly with me. Let me leave it at that at the moment. But to address your question, the reason why the Congress party's ideology has been questioned by a lot of people is because you allowed a class of people to join you who did not care for your ideology. And they are the people who left to move to the BJP. You see, I'll tell you what happens. that if you had people who were committed to your ideology, they wouldn't leave you. Now, we keep giving examples of Jyotiraditya, Jitin Prasad, RPN Singh, Sunil Jakhar, Vallabh, and so on and so forth. If you still count them, and this is how the Congress does it, they'll say, well, you add them all. Kitne honge? 10? 15? Now, you might say they are heavyweights, so attach a weight to it, but even then, you'll say, what, 20? They'll say, listen, we are so big. How many people have left? This is like a drop in the ocean. So to say that everybody is ideologically malleable or up for a garbage sale, the answer is no. Here is the second point, that the reason why Congress also lost a lot of people in Operation Lotus is because you're given tickets to people who are like, I'm not holding anything against the profession, but many people are like, contractors and businessmen and people who are looking at politics as a platform or a business model for self-aggrandizement. And I think the Congress made a huge mistake during a certain phase where started giving tickets to people not on the merit of the candidate, but on the winnability potential of the candidate based on financial resources. So, supposing if Sujit Nair is a great guy, he's got this very charming beard, looks like Karl Marx Jr., and Jha is sitting here, but Jha has got connections with the corporate world, and Jha can manage to get some cash. All things being equal, Sujit is actually a better guy because he's walked on the ground, while Jha has been, probably just got bags of money, but because he's got bags of money, maybe he'll influence the election more. Let's give the ticket to Jha. When the truth is, you may be more ideologically Congress, you may be more grounded congressman, and you may be the more committed guy who will never leave the party, win or lose. And when you make that mistake, you pay for it. I do hope the Congress party stops giving tickets to people who are criminals or who are there to just kind of, make hay while the sun shines and take the risk of fielding good candidates because sometimes you have to lose a semi-final to win a final.
Sanjay, in marketing, we say that a good brand is a brand that is very strong on its proposition.
Yeah,
So, you take your proposition throughout, right from your producer to your dealer distributor. That is when you have a strong brand.
yeah.
Sorry. Somewhere down the line, I find this proposition part a little iffy in Congress. I'll tell you what I mean by that. You had this one lot of people who we spoke about, who changed ideology overnight. Now let's talk about the second lot of people who are confused. My apologies. Sorry,
Not
who
at
are
all.
confused. Confused because what they say at times confuses the people because one doesn't know where they stand. Are they talking pro Hindutva? Are they talking anti Hindutva? Or they have not yet made up their mind whether you should be, this side or that side, or they want to have the cake and eat it too. Or, you have a lot of these. And I know, I think you know who I'm talking about, who all I'm talking about. So the point is, isn't that also confusing? Has Congress lost this concept of ideological, base that normally Congress used to have?
Sujit, I can tell you that the Congress had in the past, and I will use the past tense, allowed itself to become so cocooned and self censored itself on these issues because a lot of people told the leadership that do not take a stance, do not take a clear position because it plays into the hands of the BJP. Now, I think what you're asking is so true. How many people know the Congress party's history that what we call as the fundamentalist Hindutva organizations were part of the Congress at the very beginning, right? With the Hindu
Yes.
Mahasabha or the RSS are somewhere offshoots of the Congress party. It's a big tent party. You're talking about pre 1947, where everybody wanted independent India, right? And, it is understandable. The Hindu nationalism is a very understandable psychological phenomenon. I'm a Hindu, I'm very proud of it. We all are. Now, here is the point, though, that when Hindutva was articulated by Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, unfortunately, the what I call as the real extremists of the Hindutva organizations took that in a very different interpretation of Hinduism. which is such a universal, tolerant, compassionate, all embracing religion that I believe in. And that Hindutva became some kind of a tonic for a political energy towards nationalism. So I'm not saying that they were doing it because they didn't care for India's freedom, but their methodology was that everyone else should be excluded from it, particularly the Muslims. Okay? The Congress was the one party that brought in everybody together. And that was and has been quintessentially the story of the Indian National Congress. Now, to answer your question, the Congress today, even today, and I've been in the Congress for a very long time, the Congress has multiple voices. I know of people in the Congress who are very sympathetic towards the RSS, not the BJP, but towards the RSS's larger thought of, that, they may want a Hindu Rashtra, but they believe that RSS doesn't have a nefarious or a wicked intention of polarizing India or being anti minority. There are many people within the Congress who are what I would call as secular fundamentalists who do not want to come anywhere close to people from the Saffron family. You also had the former president, Pranab Mukherjee, who went and addressed the RSS in Nagpur. I feel to a great extent that the Congress party will have to live with this dilemma because what makes the Congress different from the BJP is that Congress is not communal. The BJP is communal. Let's not even try and flirt with any alternative to that. It is outright a communal party. If there was any further proof needed, Mr. Modi has provided that with eloquent flamboyance in Rajasthan. And therefore, the bottom line that the Congress party, has always been a party which lives with these internal contradictions. It is never easy to be a centrist Big Tent party. The problem with the Congress has been that it should wear the secular badge with pride because that's what India is. So why are you being defensive about it? And that is what has led to Congress's perception that it is pussyfooting around when it comes to the critical moments. And I know so many people who dislike the BJP, who actually believe that the BJP is not in the interest of the country, but they will concede one point in its favor, saying what you see is what you get. Whether it's, Mr. Modi has made it absolutely, transparently clear which way is the BJP going to bat in this election and afterwards. Mr. Modi may have made a statement on triple talaq and Hajj pilgrimage. Let's not fool ourselves. But end of day, he's made it very crystal clear to whatever they call as their soldiers on the ground that I am the Hindu Hriday Samrat. So a lot of people feel that the BJP, at least you know what you're biting into. With the Congress, it's about second guessing. And the Congress party is, in my opinion, not the best practitioner of secularism, but is ideologically the most secular party. Now, these are the challenges of the fault lines of politics, which is why Rahul Gandhi, when he made a statement where he said Hinduism is very different from Hindutva, this had to be carried forward. But I believe that the manifesto of this 2024 election is, in my opinion, a significant progress by the Congress because it calls a spade a spade. And I think that has unnerved Mr. Modi because the Congress is batting on the front foot on its stand on society, on its model for governance, and most importantly, talking about correcting the inequities in our system, both social and economic.
Sanjay, this BJP has been oscillating actually quite, from Sabka Vikas to Hindutva. I'll tell you what I mean by that. You
Yeah,
see,
yeah,
their stance is very different when it comes to Kerala. Stance very different when it comes to Goa. Stance
yeah,
very different when it comes to northeastern states. So
Yeah.
somewhere down the line, stands very different when it comes to Hyderabad and
Mhm.
Telangana. Now the thing is, they have been oscillating, but they have been very firm on whatever they say. So when they go out and say that, listen, we are pro Christians in Kerala, we are pro Christians in Kerala. When they say that we are pro Hindus in Hyderabad, we are pro Hindus in Hyderabad. Somewhere
Mhm.
down the line, they're very firm, and they're able to communicate what they stand for, right, wrong, otherwise. Why is the Congress not able to do that?
See, BJP has realized that in the age of mainstream media, which they influence, if not control altogether, and social media, and a prime minister who, whatever he says, has to become a headline, they can control the narrative. Now, that is not a level playing field that the Congress party has. You see, whatever Mr. Modi says has to become a headline. It has to be a prime time discussion. So he knows that he can control the narrative. Rahul Gandhi doesn't have that advantage. None of the opposition India Alliance members have that advantage. Here is the second point, that the BJP wears its hypocrisy or its duplicitous double standards as a badge of honor. It has no problem. I'll give you one example. I shudder to imagine that if I was Mr. Modi's boots, after the gang rape of that unfortunate woman who was paraded naked in Manipur, not told to the country for months, not even responding to the women champion wrestlers on the streets of Delhi begging for justice against a BJP MP accused of sexual harassment. Bilkis Banu, that's the other side of the story to Shah Banu. Gang raped in 2002 Gujarat riots when Mr. Modi was the chief minister. Her rapists are released in 2022 when India is celebrating its 75th year of Indian independence, when Mr. Modi is the prime minister, and the BJP still says we believe in Nari Shakti. You see, you need to be very thick skinned in politics. It took me some time, let me be very honest with you, Sujit, it took me some time to get used to the chaotic, tough, rhinoceros texture that I found in people around me. In my initial stages in politics, I was like, what have I got myself into? I mean, how are people so cool and blasé about saying one thing when they don't mean it? And I realized that I need to be in this politics because I need to figure out not the hypocrisy, but I need to somewhere tell myself, through whatever limited impact I have, is that no, you can have a conscience and you need not contradict yourself. Which is why on your program today, I have not shied away from telling you where the Congress has had its fault lines, right? And I feel that the BJP gets away with all of it because the BJP, at the end of the day, believes that politics is about winning an election. Do what it takes. The Americans would call it go the whole 9 yards. And that's where the Sam, Dam, Dand, Bhed politics comes in. Now, just think about it. Maharashtra, where you and I both live, we saw what the BJP did to Uddhav's Shiv Sena. We saw what the BJP did to Mr. Sharad Pawar's NCP. They didn't care. Narendra Modi called it the naturally corrupt party. He has no problem. You think Mr. Modi is not aware that people are calling this out every day on TV channels, but he's like, it doesn't matter. I have a government. Electoral bonds, probably the biggest corruption scandal in India since 1947. We can say it 100 times. Mr. Modi does not care. He will tell the opposition में भ्रष्टाचार है, हम तो दूध में धुले हुए हैं. You see, it requires a different kind of a it's not confidence, it's not arrogance. It requires a different kind of a ability to deceive yourself to the extent that you believe that what you're seeing in the mirror is not the real reflection of you.
Tell me, Sanjay, it also requires a different kind of opposition, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
1975 to 1977, we saw emergency. 1977, Indira Gandhi traveled across the country, won the election after whatever, after all the things that
Years,
she went.
3 years, yeah.
Yeah. So what did she didn't have media? There was no Republic TV. There was no Arnab Goswami to help her. She did it on her own. Isn't that a lesson that Congress should be actually learning and should try and replicate?
I keep giving that example to a lot of my friends in the Congress. What Mrs. Gandhi had was an elephant, and she turned it around in that famous Belchi incident. And I think that's what politics is about: hunger. You read all my interviews, and including on both my books, I've mentioned this point. The reason why I got very upset, in fact, I was angrier than the many people in the Congress when the Congress was not doing well, and that bothered me. I was like, मैं यहाँ बॉम्बे में बैठा हूँ. I have not asked for a ticket. I have not, and the reason why I haven't asked for a ticket is because I will never contest with any use of black money. I will have to contest within 90 lakhs. And I am more angry when the Congress is not doing well than Congress ministers and leaders and people sitting in Lutyens, Delhi. I said, what's wrong with you guys? Every time you lose, you should be angry, and you should do something about that anger constructively. Fight back. So I come from a school of thought, Sujit, that the day you lose an election, you congratulate your opponent, but the next day you get to work because another election has to be won. And I felt the difference that the Congress party did not realize and should have been inspired by Mrs. Gandhi, who lost her Raebareli seat in 1977, and the Congress in 1980 won 353 votes, Lok Sabha seats. 353 Lok Sabha seats. And she had the entire Janasangh and the Janata Party and Janata, everyone was after her, Lok Dal, etc. And she hung in there. And she defeated the whole combination of, you saw how Mr. Charan Singh's government fell, etc., etc. She took them all, she took the bull by the horns. And look at the Congress. You lose 2014, you're down to 44. For 2019, you have to start working on the 17th of May, one day after the defeat, because you had elections coming up in Haryana, Jharkhand, Maharashtra. But we did not fight. Then you lose 2019. Terrible. You go from 44 to 52. And you waste 3 years in deciding who's going to be the next Congress president. So today, if the Congress is not a front runner, I do hope the India Alliance will win this election. Things can change dramatically. And I'm believing that things are beginning to reflect a momentum towards the opposition with unemployment, inflation, corruption, development, farmers' protest, the death of democracy, the ED, CBI, income tax, arrest of Arvind Kejriwal, and of course, not to forget the hate speeches made by Mr. Modi, electoral bonds. I do think they have created a massive, dramatic upsurge in voter sentiment, not just sympathy towards the opposition. It can still happen. But I still maintain that the Congress party should have done better. Today, I would have liked it if instead of us discussing that can the Congress party upset the BJP, the conversation should have been, is the BJP catching up with the India Alliance instead of it being the other way around? That's what I mean. So the short answer to your question is the Congress lacked hunger. And to some extent, this does happen because a lot of people in the Congress believe that the BJP will self destruct. And second, when you've been in power for too long, you haven't understood that the role of the challenger is perhaps more important than the one occupying the high seat.
Sanjay, I'll end my show with a very simple question from a viewer.
Sure.
A very simple question from a viewer. The question is directed to you, Sanjay. He says, Sanjay ji, who should we vote? I presume he's talking about Muslims. Who should we vote? Who will look after us?
Well, I can tell you that the Muslims of this country, they are Indian citizens. It is such a tragedy, Sujit, that the way the Prime Minister referred to the minority community of Muslims as if they're not Indian citizens. They hold Indian passports. They have Aadhaar cards. They have election commission cards. They'll be voting in this election. And it is so sad that in a country which is revered the world around for its diversity and multicultural uh, pluralism, that we have to look at Muslims as a separate, struggling, marginalized community within our own country. That to me is the ultimate mammoth tragedy which has been unleashed following Mr. Modi's speech, but I hope it will get corrected. Who should the Muslims bat for or feel the support for? I think one is they must definitely look at their candidates. But if you look at the political parties, I think the India alliance, for all their internal battles and they have fought for seats, etc., etc., the India alliance is, in my opinion, the most secular, secure alliance in this country. I know there are people within it who have track records that can be questioned, but I think they're all committed on social justice. And I do believe that India, at the end of the day, Sujit, if you look at UPA, people called it a coalition, and Mr. Modi's as a full majority government. But the coalition give you higher growth. The coalition give you better number of people who got lifted out of poverty. The coalition give you freedom of expression. You could challenge Dr. Manmohan Singh. Arnab Goswami grew during that time, right? His programs, I used to attend them every day. He lambasted Dr. Manmohan Singh. There was a freedom of speech, right? And actually, Mr. Modi's government has underperformed economically. It has destroyed democracy, and it has polarized our society. So I think India probably needs a coalition. Like my friend Dr. Shashi Tharoor very often says, India is like a thali, multiple colors, variety of delicacies and achars and chutneys and papads and bhat dal and amti and a Gujarati thali or a Rajasthani thali or a thali in Andhra. It's a delight, and I do hope the India Alliance will pull this off. India needs a rainbow coalition, a one that blends colors, blends our diverse cultures, brings us all together, because that is the India that we all deserve.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. Thank you so much. Always such a pleasure talking to you.
Same here. Thank you so much, Sujit.